Okay, I think that we can start at least with the project presentation. Then if other people join in the meantime, we will let them in. So I'm going to introduce myself again for those of you who are joining our webinars for the first time. My name is Isabel Martinez. I work for Erasmus Learning Academy, and I am the project coordinator of the project AI-nclusion. Today I will also be your speaker, so it's my turn this time. And I have a background in as a teacher trainer in inclusive education. So before we start with the topic of the webinar, I would like to give you, let's say, an overview of our project. So as you already know, the name of our project is AI for Inclusion, empowering teachers to support neurodivergent and ASD students through AI-enhanced personalized learning experiences. So as you already know, this is a KA2 project, an Erasmus plus KA2 project. So the objective of this kind of projects is to promote cooperation among educational institutions, organizations, schools, and so on. So in our case, the aim of our project is to promote inclusive education in secondary schools through the use of artificial intelligence. So we are focusing on raising awareness about neurodiversity and autism spectrum disorder, or ASD, and on developing AI-based tools and training to support personalized learning for neurodivergent students. So this is our partnership. So the project is coordinated by Erasmus Learning Academy in Italy, and we have as partners also our colleagues from Spain, Erasmus Learning Academy SL. Then we have a Serbian organization, Dajmiruku, and we have 3 schools from Portugal, Poland, and Romania. So the objectives of our project are, as I was saying, to raise awareness on neurodiversity and ASD in the school environment, to foster teachers' competencies and methodologies to address the needs of students with neurodivergence and ASD, to empower and inspire teachers in leveraging AI for inclusion, to foster inclusion of students with neurodivergence and ASD through AI-based educational solutions and learning materials, and of course, to foster international cooperation in the field of responsible, ethical, and inclusive AI application in education. We have 3 target groups. So our first target group is, of course, students of secondary school aged 14 till 18 with neurodivergence, in particular ASD. Then we have teachers and support professionals working in secondary schools. And we have teacher trainers that are providing training and support to teachers, special educational needs teachers and educators. So in the framework of this project that will last 3 years, we will develop a lot of activities. So right now we are in the first section of the project. So we are currently doing an awareness campaign on neurodiversity and ASD that you can check out in all of the social media of all of the project partners. And of course, we are doing a cycle of 5 open webinars. Today, it's the 3rd webinar. We will also develop the AI inclusion tank, which will be a platform where you will find a lot of resources, tools, activities related to inclusion. We will develop 2 training courses, one on inclusive teaching practices, enhancing support for students with neurodivergence and ASD, and one on making the most of AI for personalized learning experiences for students with neurodivergence and ASD. So one more related to inclusion and the other more related to the use of AI. We will also create a mentorship program, and we will hold some local hackathons. We will create a toolkit of AI-based activities and interactive guidelines on inclusion and on ethical AI use. So these are the main results that the AI inclusion project will bring. So you can stay tuned in our website, our social media to follow the next steps. So I think we can start with today's topic. So today I would like to talk to you about the Italian experience with inclusive education. So this webinar will begin with an introduction to the Italian education system within the European policy framework. We will then focus on the legal and policy background of inclusive education in Italy. We will highlight its historical development, the key legislation, and the role of support teachers in mainstream schools. We will continue with a presentation of practical implementation strategies, including individualized education plans, personalized learning pathways, cooperation between teachers, families, and support services, inclusive teaching methodologies, and the use of digital tools. This will be followed by a session on current challenges and good practices, with concrete examples from schools and a discussion on transferable lessons. In conclusion, I hope you will share your own best practices so that we can exchange experiences and perspectives. So I wanted this webinar to be a bit interactive as well. So I hope to hear from you too. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to do an introduction to the Italian education system. So first of all, let's have a look at what inclusive education in Europe is. So inclusive education in Europe is implemented in different ways depending on the country. So some countries follow what is called a unidirectional approach, where all students, including those with disabilities, attend mainstream schools. Other countries in Europe adopt a bidirectional approach, where students with disabilities are often educated separately in special schools or specialized classrooms. Finally, many countries also follow a multidirectional approach. So basically, they offer a variety of options in both mainstream and specialized pathways, giving the families the freedom to choose what is the most suitable learning environment for their child. So let's focus a bit more on the unidirectional approach, because this is what we follow in Italy. So the unidirectional approach to inclusive education is based on the idea that all students belong in mainstream classrooms, regardless of their abilities or disabilities. So in this model, there are no separate special schools or special classes. The learners with visible or with hidden disabilities, they study alongside their peers in the same educational environment. They spend most of their time in the regular classroom. They participate in the same activities as the other students. And of course, they have support when needed. So the goal is to promote equal opportunities, full participation, and a sense of belonging as well for every student. So I would like to show you this statistic where we can see how many students are for at least 80% in mainstream education. So the placement benchmark is 80%. So for example, I don't know if you can see it because it's quite small, but if we look at Italy, we can see that 99.99% of students are in mainstream education. So we can see that Italy follows the unidirectional approach. So everyone is in mainstream school, people with disabilities included. If we take, for example, Iceland, we can see that it's 86% of students that are in mainstream education. So if we take into account that around 20% of students in total has special needs, we know that they are probably in Iceland in special schools, so they are not in mainstream education. One thing that I would also like to stress is that placement is not necessarily inclusion, because maybe, yes, everyone is in mainstream education, everyone learns with all of their peers, but maybe there is no personalized approach or there is not sufficient support. So placement doesn't mean necessarily inclusion. So before we move on, I would like to hear from your experience, okay? So I would like you to take a few minutes, 3, 4, 5 minutes, to write in the chat, in your opinion, what do you think are the pros and cons of special needs schools? So there is no right or wrong option, both are valid, both have benefits and disadvantages. So I would just like to know, what do you think are the pros and cons of a child with disabilities attending a special needs school? So I will check out the chat. I'll give you, let's say, 5 minutes. So I see a lot of replies already. So while you finish typing your reply, I'm going to read some of them. So Margarida says, as a pro, they have specialized people working there. Maria Fernanda, that promotes equality and respect for diversity. Another pro, all the students have special needs, so there is no confrontation with regular students. Eva writes, the advantage of special schools is that all their teachers are special educators, right? In regular schools, teachers are who are generally not trained to work with neurodivergent children work with them. Marina writes, adapted curriculum with personalized approach to each student, adapted space in the classroom, time allocation on what is needed at the given moment. Another pro is increases the sense of belonging. Katarina writes, existing special needs schools provide specialized support and a learning environment adapted to students' need, but it can also limit inclusion and interaction with peers in mainstream education. From Sara, we have more pros, so a smaller number of students and an adapted curriculum. Sorry, it's a very difficult word, and learning pace. Cons is isolation from society and prejudice against special schools and their students. Susanna writes, the pro is that they are followed and supported by many specialists. Con, they are isolated and not in contact with the real world. Also, the children in normal schools, they will never be in contact with diversities. Margarida writes, as a con, the students only interact with special needs students. There is no interaction with real life. Some schools may not have enough specialized teachers, assistants, adapted materials, or proper facilities. Another con is the lack of influence of kids with regular development, which could be beneficial. Special schools still have too many students in the class for the learning effect to be successful, and teachers may find it difficult to meet the needs of all students at the same time, especially in large classes. For smaller work groups, pros, smaller work groups, cons, difficult fitting later into the regular system. Another con, form of segregation towards special needs students, lack of real life context for the skills application of what is learned. And another con, it can be viewed as a discrimination. So very good job. So you raised a lot of very important points. So let's see, I have summarized some of them in the next slides. So as we were saying, as many of you were already saying in the chat, a pro is that special needs schools are designed to specifically support children with disabilities. So they offer tailored programs, therapeutic support, and highly trained staff. They also have smaller class sizes that allow for a more individualized attention, often with specialized tools, quiet environments, and sensory accommodations that may be difficult to implement in the mainstream classrooms. For some children with complex or intensive needs, these settings can provide safety, structure, and predictability that are essential for progress. There are, of course, also cons to special needs schools. Many of them, you already highlighted them in your comments. So despite the benefits, specialized schools can unintentionally reinforce segregation. So when children with disabilities are educated apart from their peers, they often miss out on vital social interaction and the opportunity to build real-world relationship skills. This separation may perpetuate stigmas and limit their preparation for inclusive community life. Long-term, it can also reduce expectations and restrict access to the broader curriculum or societal participation. So as you can see, there are some pros and cons to special needs schools. We will see now how it works in Italy and how does it work when it's the complete opposite. So everyone is in mainstream education. So before looking at the specific tools and structures of the Italian model, I think it's useful to start from the general structure and the legal and policy background. So in Italy, inclusive education is not considered an optional approach or a special program, but it's a right that is connected to the broader constitutional principles of equity, equality, participation, and access to education. So this means that children with disabilities are generally included in mainstream schools from the earliest stages of education, rather than being educated in separate institutions. So Italy is often presented as a strong example in this field because as we were saying, almost all students with disabilities attend mainstream schools, so 99.99%. So this very high inclusion rate reflects a national framework that is built around equality, accessibility, and shared responsibility, as we will see in the next slides. So the education system is organized into different stages, starting from early childhood services that are for children aged 0 to 6. Then we have primary and lower secondary education from 6 to 14. And finally, upper secondary education from 14 to 19, which is the target group of our project. So what is important here is that inclusion is meant to start early. So already in nursery and in preschool services, through the cooperation between public and private providers, the families, and local services. So the Italian model is based on the idea that inclusion should accompany the student throughout the whole educational pathway, so from early childhood to the end of secondary school. In this slide, to give you an idea, I'm showing you this graphic so that you can see the Italian education system. So we start at 0 years old until university. You can see the ages above, all the dots, and the red dots are the years when education is mandatory. So in Italy, it's mandatory to go to school from age 6 until 16 years old. For example, as you can see, preschool is not mandatory, so it's up to every parent to decide if they want to send their children to preschool or not, even though it is more common to attend preschool. And as you can see, preschool is divided into two. So we have asilo nido, so kindergarten from 0 to 3, and then scuola dell'infanzia, so preschool from 3 to 6. So this is when inclusive practices should start. Another interesting fact for us, since the main target group of our project is students for upper secondary school, is that you can stop at 16 without obtaining high school diploma. So one of the reasons why Italy is often considered a pioneer in inclusive education is the strong legal framework that is developed, that has been developed over the past decades. So a major turning point came in 1977 with Law 517, which is when Italy abolished most special schools and introduced the principle of full integration of students with disabilities into mainstream classrooms. So at the time, this was considered a revolutionary step because it shifted the idea of special education from being something separated from ordinary schooling to becoming shared responsibility within the general education system. So later in 1992, we have Law 104 that became another cornerstone of inclusive education in Italy. So this law strengthened the right of people with disabilities by guaranteeing individualized education support, access to resources, and a greater protection within the schools and within society. It also reinforced the idea of the importance of active participation and collaboration between the schools, the families, and the professionals. More recently, we have in 2010, Law 170 that officially recognized specific learning disorders such as dyslexia, dysgraphia, dysorthographia, and dyscalculia. So this law was particularly important because it acknowledged that students may have different learning needs even without a disability diagnosis. So it promoted also the idea of using compensatory tools, personalized strategies, and more general educational accommodations within mainstream education. So in the Italian inclusive education system, support teachers that are known in Italian as insegnanti di sostegno play a central role in mainstream classrooms. So it's important to understand that support teachers are not assistants that are working separately with one student, but they are co-equals with teachers, with regular teachers, let's say, and they collaborate with them on a regular basis. So their role, the role of a support teacher, includes, for example, co-planning lessons, adapting the materials, supporting participation, and also contributing to the learning environment whole class. So not only for students with disabilities. In order to become support teachers in Italy, professionals must complete a specialized training program in universities that include pedagogical, psychological, and inclusive educational components. Alongside support teachers, school might also work with educators that usually support students that have more complex needs, either social or behavioral or also medical needs. Unlike support teachers, educators are generally employed by local authorities or by external services. So they're not directly hired, let's say, by the school system as support teachers. So in the image that you can see here, you have some examples of co-teaching methods and models that are commonly used in inclusive classrooms. So for example, we have parallel teaching. So the class is divided into two smaller groups. Both teachers teach the same content simultaneously. This can be useful. It's a useful approach because it can increase the participation, allow more individualized interaction with students since the groups are smaller. Then we have alternative teaching, which is when teachers work with different groups using different levels of support. The explanation and the learning approaches are also different depending on students' needs. So in this case, the content is the same, but the delivery is different. Other models can include, for example, station teaching, where students rotate between different learning stations that are led by teachers, or they can also perform independent activities. We have also team teaching, so where both teachers teach together at the same time and they share instructions in a dynamic way. There is also one teach, one observe. So one teacher leads the lesson while the other observes the students' participation or specific learning behaviors. There is one teach, one assist, where one teacher leads the activity and the other provides immediate support when needed. So if students need additional help, they have a dedicated teacher for that. So these models, they can help create a more flexible and a more collaborative learning environment. They support the participation of students and also the accessibility for a wider range of learners. So not only for students with disabilities. I would like now to check out what are the practical implementation strategies that the Italian inclusive model is based on. So the first tool, let's say, the resource that I would like to show you is the PEI, or Piano Educativo Individualizzato. So in Italian, we call it PEI. It's one of the central tools of the Italian inclusive education system, and it's a personalized education plan. So it is the PEI is specifically designed for students with disabilities and is developed in a collaborative way by the GLO. So we're gonna discover what the GLO is later on, but basically it's an operational working group. Since it is individualized, meaning that there is a different pay for every student with disabilities, it can have different objectives compared to the rest of the class. Okay, so it doesn't necessarily need to have the same objectives. The GLO is a multidisciplinary team, and it usually includes classroom teachers, support teachers, the families as well, other specialists, educators, or when needed, also external professionals that are involved in some way in the student support pathway. So it's important to understand that the pay is not is not made only by the school staff, but by everyone that surrounds the students and supports the student in its growth and progress. So it does not focus only on academic performance, but looks at the student in a more holistic way, let's say. It's structured in 4 main dimensions. We have socialization and interaction, communication and language, autonomy and orientation, cognition, and learning. So this means that the plan considers not only what the student is learning, but how they communicate, how they participate in different relationships, how they move within the school environment, and more in general, how they develop their own independence. Another important aspect of the PEI is that it is not a fixed document. So it's a document that is regularly reviewed, and it's adapted according to the needs of the student that evolve, of course, the progress that they make, and also in case there is a change in the classroom dynamic, for example. So it's a dynamic document. It changes according to the needs of the moment. So the overall goal is to create a personalized and realistic, especially realistic, educational pathway that supports both the participation and the learning within mainstream education. Another tool that I would like to show you is dedicated for students with specific learning disorders that in Italy are known as DSA, so disturbi specifici dell'apprendimento, such as dyslexia, dysgraphia, dysorthografia, dyscalculia. These students, they are supported by the personalized didactic plan, piano didattico personalizzato, or PDP. So we were saying that the PEI, so this that we were talking earlier, the personalized education plan, might include different learning objectives compared to the rest of the class. So unlike the PEI, the PDP includes has the same curricular goals, okay, than the rest of the class. So what changes with the PDP is not the educational target, but the strategies and the tools that are used to help students access learning more effectively, okay? So the PDP can include, for example, compensatory tools that might help students overcome some specific difficulties. For example, text-to-speech softwares, voice recorders, concept maps, certain digital tools, or tools that support reading and writing, for example. It can also include dispensatory methods, so measures that help the students reach their goals, such as, for example, extending the time during assessments, or reduce the written workload, or using alternative forms of evaluation. So the idea behind the PDP is to reduce the barriers without lowering the expectations. So the PDP allows the students to demonstrate their knowledge, to demonstrate their competencies through more accessible learning pathways, but without changing the objectives that the rest of the class shares. So these students, they remain fully included in mainstream classrooms, and they are taught by regular teachers using differentiated and flexible teaching approaches. Another aspect I would like to show you of the Italian inclusive education system is the presence of different working groups that are specifically dedicated to inclusion. So these groups, they operate on a school level, on a territorial level, and they help ensure that inclusion does not depend only on the initiatives of individual teachers, but that they become but that it becomes a structured and a collaborative process. So the first group is the GLI, so the School Inclusion Group, in Italian Gruppo di Lavoro per l'Inclusione. So this is why it's called GLI. So this group works within each school and helps coordinate the school's overall inclusive strategy. So the GLI supports teachers, monitors the inclusion practices, contributes to the development of the annual inclusion plan, which we're going to see what it is in a second, which is known as PAI, so Piano Annuale per l'Inclusione. Then we have the GLO, which we have already seen, the Operational Working Group, or GLO stands for Gruppo di Lavoro Operativo, which focuses on the individual students. So we have already seen the GLO because they are the ones that prepares the I cannot say PEI, it's too difficult. I call it in Italian PEI. So the GLO is probably one of the most important groups in practical terms, because basically, as we were saying, it brings together teachers, families, support teachers, specialists, so anyone that is responsible for the growth and progress of the child. And they collaboratively develop and monitor the personalized education plan, so the PEI, Piano Educativo Individualizzato. So the idea is that educational goals and support strategies should not be decided by one person alone. So the responsibility cannot be of one person alone, but it has to be a cooperation between all of the people involved in the student's educational journey. Finally, we have the GIT, Territorial Inclusion Group, or in Italian, Gruppo per l'Inclusione Territoriale. This group operates on a territorial level, so not on a school level like the GLI and the GLO. And they support the schools of the territory. They coordinate educational support, they coordinate inclusion resources. They help also strengthen the connection between schools, institutions, and local services. So they have more the, let's say, the overview of the situation of the different schools within the area. So these structures, they reflect, let's say, one of the key principles of the Italian model, which is that inclusion is a shared responsibility. It has to involve schools, families, professional, and in general, the wider community. So it cannot be the responsibility of the school alone. So I was telling you about the PAI, which is also another important tool within the Italian inclusive system, Piano Annuale per l'Inclusione, so annual inclusion plan. Every school is required to prepare this document each year as a way to reflect on their inclusive practices. They have to, through this document, they have to identify their strengths and their challenges as well, and improvements. So the process is usually coordinated by the GLI, so the School Inclusion Group, which analyzes the school's needs. They evaluate the inclusion strategies that are already taking place, and they also propose actions to improve the accessibility and the participation for all students. So the PAI is an administrative document, but it is also a reflective and a planning tool. So it helps school develop a more conscious and of course also a more structured approach to inclusion. Some of the information that you can find in the PAI are the school context, the support measures that are already in place, the teacher training needs. So they also identify the needs for professional development of their teachers as well, if there are any critical issues, and also the future objectives related to inclusion. So every year they make a new PAI, so they can check if the objectives have been reached and what are the new objectives for the current year. At the end of all of this process, the PAI is submitted annually to the regional educational authorities. So the PAI helps create a system of accountability and also a mindset of continuous improvement, because it encourages schools to monitor their progress and to further develop inclusive educational practices over time. So to conclude this section, I would like to have a bit of a reflection on the Italian model that I just told you about. So we can say that experience shows that large-scale inclusion within mainstream education is possible, especially when there is a strong legal support, when there is collaborative planning and a systemic approach to accountability. One of the main strengths of the Italian model is the fact that almost all students with disabilities attend mainstream public schools rather than being in a separate institution. Another important strength is the presence of different groups structured groups, such as the GLI, the GLO, and the GIT, that help coordinate inclusion at different levels of the system. This model also promotes pedagogical co-responsibility between teachers, especially through the collaboration between classroom teachers, support teachers, educators, and so on. At the same time, of course, the Italian system is not perfect, so there are still many important challenges that schools and professionals continue to face. For example, the quality of training and the availability of the resources can vary significantly between different regions and between different schools. So this is something that we have to take into account. The quality of inclusion is not the same everywhere. Support teachers also have can experience very often a very heavy workload. And also in some cases, they have limited continuity from one school year to the other. So from an organizational point of view, it's very difficult for them. They are at risk of burnout because they have a very, very heavy workload and a lot of bureaucracy as well. Another thing is that there is also a strong need for continuous professional development. So it's important that teachers can keep updating their competencies in inclusive education, in neurodiversity, and in differentiated teaching approaches. So this is also something that it's not always possible, especially when we relate to the when we link it to the heavy workload that the teachers experience. So it is true that the Italian model represents an important example of systematic inclusion, but it is also a system that requires ongoing reflection, investment, so in terms of time and money as well, and improvement, of course, because there is always the need to improve. So in this section, I would like to tell you about current challenges and good practices. So this is the last section of our webinars, where I will ask you again for your experience. So if we think about challenges, one of the main challenges in inclusive education is managing classrooms that have very diverse learners, while still ensuring a meaningful participation of everyone. So teachers are, of course, expected to follow the national curriculum and the educational standards. At the same time, they need to adapt teaching methods, they need to adapt materials, they need to adapt the assessment strategies according to all the students' individual needs. So this balance is, of course, not very easy, as I'm sure you know, since many of you are teachers. It requires time, a lot of time. You need to be very flexible. You need to be creative with your teaching. And of course, it also requires continuous professional development. So in recent years, several approaches have become increasingly popular and important in supporting inclusion. I will not talk about it a lot because the next webinar will talk about different strategies, but one example can be the Universal Design for Learning, or UDL, that encourages teachers to provide multiple ways for students to access information, to participate in activities, to demonstrate their learning. Cooperative learning strategies can also support inclusion by promoting peer interaction, promoting collaboration, active participation, especially when we have very heterogeneous groups. Flexible assessment methods are also equally important because they allow students to show their competencies through different formats and not only through traditional written tests. However, these approaches, they cannot rely only on individual teacher motivation. So schools and educational system, they need to provide the adequate support through a dedicated planning time, for example, mentoring opportunities, the opportunity of collaboration between professionals and teachers, and also continuous trainings. So without this structural support, it can be very difficult to promote inclusive practices. And especially even if you manage to use them, it's difficult to maintain them in the long term. Another important challenge that is connected to inclusive education is also resistance to inclusion. So this type of resistance is often not caused by bad intentions, but usually it is caused by fear or by misinformation or by previous negative experiences as well. So, for example, some parents of typically developing children, they might worry that inclusion could slow down the class or could negatively affect their child's learning experiences. At the same time, teachers and school staff sometimes might feel unprepared to manage very diverse classrooms, especially if they lack the adequate training, if they don't have the right resources, or if they don't feel support from above, let's say from the school. In some cases, there is also the problem of stress and burnout that are linked to these increasing responsibilities. Interestingly, resistance can also sometimes come from families of students with disabilities or neurodivergence. So this happens, for example, when they feel that the school environment is not truly ready, they don't feel supported enough, or they don't feel the space is accessible enough for their child. So this is why inclusion, it's not something that we can impose it through policies, because in this way we could encounter some resistance. So how do we overcome this resistance? The first step is listening. So schools need to keep open communications and honest dialogues with teachers, with families, and with students as well, so that they can understand what their concerns are, and they can also build a relationship of trust. Also sharing positive examples and showing successful inclusion experiences is often much more effective than just theoretical discussions of what inclusion should be. It is also important to frame inclusion not as a burden, but as an opportunity. Okay, so making people understand that it's an opportunity to create richer learning environments, develop stronger relationships, and more connected school communities. So it's important that families also understand that inclusive education doesn't benefit only the students with disabilities or neurodivergence, but the entire school community. Another thing is that in order to be truly inclusive, schools also need environments that are physically accessible and also logistically accessible. So not only from a pedagogical point of view, but from a physical, logistical, and pedagogical point of view. However, at least in Italy, many schools still face important structural challenges. For example, in Italy, we have a lot of schools that needed extensive work because they were very old buildings. So some buildings, for example, might not be fully accessible because there are stairs, or there are narrow doorways, or there is an absence of ramps or elevators. In other cases, in the classrooms, for example, there must be a lack of appropriate learning materials, such as visual support or adaptive tools. Even classroom layouts and the furniture can sometimes create some barriers, especially for students with disabilities, sensory sensitivities, and also attention difficulties. Another major issue can be limited access to assistive technology that can play a very important role in supporting the participation and the communication for many students. Schools might also struggle with insufficient support staff, even though the students' need increase. So it's important to understand that inclusion is also reflected in the physical organization of the school spaces and the organization of the daily routines. So it's not only about the teaching methods or the lesson planning. So there are some very small adaptations, such as, for example, creating sensory-friendly corner in the classroom, so a quiet space where students can regulate themselves during moments of overload. Even creating something like this can become very difficult if you don't have the adequate support, funding as well, planning time, and also structural flexibility. So it's not always very easy even to do small adaptations. So it's important to have a systemic investment and long-term commitment from the school. Another mean of support that I would say it's one of the most important is that schools should try to understand also the meaning behind behaviors instead of just trying to correct them. So very often there are behaviors that are labeled as problematic when they are in fact just signs of students feeling overwhelmed or feeling anxious or struggling to cope with their emotions and with the environment around them. So if you have a student that refuses to participate, maybe it's not a matter of not feeling motivation, but maybe they might feel anxious because maybe the instructions were not clear, or they are afraid of social judgment, or maybe they feel that the activity they have to do is unpredictable, and this is causing anxiety. Also, when we see examples of emotional outbursts, sometimes they are more linked to a sensory overload that is maybe caused by the noise, by the lights, by a crowded environment like the school is. So as teachers, you know that schools can be pretty noisy and crowded. So there are some small practical adaptations that we can make as teachers that can make a huge difference. So, for example, using a visual schedule or warning students before a transition. So explaining, okay, now we are doing this activity, but we are about to start something new. Or also allowing for short movement breaks. So all of these things, they can reduce stress significantly. So the questions that we should ask ourselves is not how do we stop this behavior. Instead, we should ask, what is this student trying to communicate? And from that, we can work on the solutions. Another point that I would like to make is also that many neurodivergent students, they might actually struggle more during social moments than during the lessons. So there are situations that can be challenging for them, such as lunch breaks or transitions between one class and the other, or also assigning group work can feel like an unpredictable moment. So it's very emotionally exhausting. Because of this, schools should actively support social inclusion and not assume that this kind of interaction of relationships, of peer interaction, happens naturally and without any challenge for everyone. Some examples of practical strategies that that we can do are, for example, creating small facilitated social groups where students can interact in a calmer environment and they feel more supported. Other schools also implement buddy systems, so they assign like to a student another student that is their buddy, or also peer mentoring programs. Group work can also become more inclusive if teachers provide clearer roles. They state more clearly what the expectations are, because sometimes we make the mistake of assuming that all students automatically know how to collaborate socially, when it is not always the case, especially when we think about neurodivergent students. Another important point is that inclusion is also about educating the classmates. So schools should help students understand different communication styles and encourage them to use those communication styles to become more, to create a more respectful environment and more, how do we say, like supportive interaction. Okay. So the final idea that I would like to highlight is the importance of flexibility in teaching practices and in classroom environments. So in order to be inclusive, we don't have to lower the expectations. The idea is to remove the unnecessary barriers. If we remove these barriers, we stop preventing students from participating fully in the school life. So there are many small adaptations that can have very positive impacts. So for example, we can break tasks into smaller and clearer steps. In this way, we can support students who struggle with organization and with executive functioning. We can use visual support and graphic organizers so that we can help students process information more easily. We can also grant additional processing time that might reduce anxiety and also improve the participation. Another example is the creation of sensory-friendly corners. So providing a space for students to regulate themselves when they're feeling overwhelmed. The final point that I would like to make is that all of these strategies that we talked about today, they often benefit all learners. So this is not just for neurodivergent students, but if we have a flexible classroom, we will create a better learning condition for everybody. So not just for the students who are neurodivergent. So I think I have talked a lot already, so I would like to hear from you now. This is the last part of our webinar. So since we talked a lot about best practices and resources and tools, I would like to ask you to share your own best practices. So if there is any advice, any tip, any tool that you use or activity, any best practice that you can think of. I'm going to give you 5 minutes to think about it. You can either write it in the chat, or if you feel brave, you can also turn on your the sound from your computer and share it later in front of everyone. Okay, so I give you 5 minutes to think about it, and then in 5 minutes, I'm going to ask you to share. Either I will read it in the chat or you can talk. Okay. So I see here a contribution from Susanna in the chat that says, I find it very important the use of ICT tools and apps to differentiate learning in order to adapt to different needs and create personalized activities. For example, learning apps, Padlet, or some AI tools like Magic Schools. So this is very fitting to the topic of our project. So AI tools. Thank you very much. Another contribution from Elena. It is important to talk about positive communication and empathy. So I assume with all the classmates. For one of the projects we created empathy conversational guidelines that teachers and educators can use. We use some activities to help participants to share their feelings and gratitude to each other. Very nice. Thank you very much for the contribution. Is there someone that would like to share something just even without writing, just by saying that? One more contribution from Maria Fernanda. Some important tools for the inclusion of students with special educational needs are visual support, communication, assistive technology, interactive educational apps, text-to-speech tools, visual timers, yes, we didn't mention that, and adapted learning materials. So these tools help promote autonomy, participation, and well-being in the classroom. Very good. Eva says, given that there are specialized schools in Serbia, our association organizes joint activities with children from regular schools, as well as activities with employees in numerous companies. For several years, we organized the event What I Can Do, What I Know, during which neurodivergent children taught the participants on various topics. So they taught them to knit bracelet, to dance specific choreography, to sculpt, etc. And even acting. So many things to do with local community to help children to feel part of the community. Very good. So this is a very, I think, interesting contribution, since we talk about what happens in a country where almost all of the students with disabilities and with neurodivergence are in mainstream education. I think this is a very good example to see how you fill that gap, given that in Serbia there are specialized schools. So how do you make people feel part of the community and to avoid that feeling of segregation? So very good. Thank you very much, Eva. Then Margarita wrote, each student has its own educational plan, very good, and his own schedule. The teachers and staff adapt to them. The special education team is always trying to integrate the students in local businesses when they attend professional courses, very good. In Portugal, schools also have partnerships with organizations dedicated to inclusion, such as APADIMP, we think is very important. Perfect. So thank you very much for your contributions. And thank you also for attending this third webinar. So our next webinar will be organized by our Portuguese partner from Agrupamento de Escolas de Pinheiro, and they will talk about personalized learning strategies for neurodivergent students. So we will learn even more strategies, even more methods and tools and resources. So don't miss it. It will be on the 17th of June at the same time, 3:30. As usual, you will receive from me an email with the link. So before you go, I ask you to scan the QR code and leave your feedback. As I told you already, you will receive the certificate only upon the completion of the feedback form. Okay, so I will stay in the call with this slide open for a few minutes, so that you have all the time that you need to scan the QR code and leave the feedback form. But in the meantime, I want to thank you very much for attending today's webinar and for your contributions in the chat. I think they really enriched the topic. So thank you very much for sharing your experiences. And I wish you a good rest of the week. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.